I'll say that for a long time, I didn't have a theory. I just was trying to learn. We're faced with a paradox, really, and that is that there's no single biological marker or pattern of biological markers that, like, no biomarkers for any category of emotion. Yet, when I'm angry, I feel angry. And I don't feel sad or happy, or, I have an immediate reaction, and I don't think about why I'm having it or which one I'm having. And pretty much people, that's their experience. They feel like emotions happen to them. It feels like something's being triggered. So you've got these subjective experiences of certainty. And then on the other hand, you've got this biological question of like, well, there are no markers anywhere. Plus what you have is tremendous variation across cultures, just even in the categories that exist. So not all the categories that we think of as basic in English actually exist in other languages. And there are many other categories that are basic for other languages that don't exist in our language. So how do you account for all of this in one theory? This was a puzzle to me for a really long time. So what I did is I started to study brain evolution. So how do brains evolve, and how are they structured, and how do they work? So instead of doing what most scientists do, is they say, okay, well, I'm really interested in anger, or fear, or sadness. So I'm going to go looking for the physical basis of those emotions in the brain or in the body. I started with the brain and body and said, okay, well, to the best of our knowledge, how did a brain like ours evolve? How does it work? How is it structured? What's its anatomy? And then how is it, communicating with the body? And then given that we have that kind of biology, how could it be creating the instances or the events that we experience as emotion? And I came up with a really different set of hypotheses that required a really different way of doing science. And it's a little more complicated than you've got a circuit in your brain that you were born with that triggers and then produces an emotion, prototypic emotion. And the theory goes something like this. Your brain's most important job is regulating your body. It's not to think or feel or see even. It's to regulate the systems of your body in a metabolically efficient way. That's actually the basis of everything your brain does, and anything you see or feel or hear or think is in the service of that regulation. So that's the first piece. Your brain, as part of this regulation, it's always receiving signals from the body and signals from the world. So every experience you have, every action you take is some combination of what's inside your brain and what's outside your brain coming to the sensory surfaces of your body. So your brain's always regulating your body. Your body's always sending sensory signals back to your brain to report on the sensory consequences of those movements inside your body, your heart beating, your lungs expanding, whatever. But also you're always receiving sensory signals from the surfaces, sensory surfaces that we think of as exteroceptive signals. The interesting thing is that these signals, from the brain's perspective, are ambiguous because the brain is trapped in a dark, silent box called your skull. And these signals are the outcomes of some set of changes in the body and in the world that the brain has no access to, right? So like a loud bang could be a door slamming, a car backfiring, or a gunshot. What your brain will do to keep itself alive and well is very different in those circumstances. So how does it know? And the answer is it has to guess. This is what philosophers call an inverse problem. And, where you receive the outcome, but you don't know the cause. You have to guess at the cause. And what does the brain use to guess? It uses past experience. It's remembering. And you don't experience yourself remembering, but basically your brain is remembering a bunch of instances from the past that are similar to the present. A bunch of things which are similar is called a category. So your brain's basically using the past to construct categories in the moment that will allow it to prepare action. The interesting thing is that research suggests the brain is functioning predictively, which means the guess starts before the sensory signals arrive. So if we were to stop time right now, your brain is modeling what it believes to be the sensory state of your body and the sensory conditions of the world. And based on that, it's reinstating a bunch of partial representations, a category that's similar to the present, as a way of preparing the regulation of the body, anticipating the needs of the body and preparing to meet those needs before they arise, so that movements can occur, like eye movements or muscle movements. And the consequences of those movements are the predicted sensory inputs that are arriving from the sensory surfaces. And so the brain is comparing those, and the result is your experience. So what's interesting about this perspective is a couple of things. One is that it's not like you see something and then react to it and then move. Perception is a consequence of movement preparation, not the other way around. The brain is functioning predictively, even though it creates experiences of the world as if it's reacting to the world. So there's a real puzzle here, which is, why would a brain function predictively but create experiences of reactions? Now, nobody knows the answer to that question. And the way that emotions are constructed are the way that every psychological feature is constructed. There's no specific set of mechanisms to emotion that would be different from cognition or perception or attention or what have you. I think that things like cognition and emotion and attention and perception are features of a brain state. I think if they're features that happen to be very salient, then we call the event a thought or a memory or an emotion or a perception. But I think about the brain holistically as a dynamical system, a system of neurons and other bits and bobs that moves from state to state to state. Or you could say traverses of state space, like it always is in a state and the nature of the state changes. So I think about emotions as, for example, your brain is always regulating your body or you'd be dead. So it's always regulating the body. Body's always sending signals back to the brain. It's very infrequently that you will experience those signals as your heart pounding or your lungs expanding. You never feel, your liver excreting chemicals or hormones. Like, you just don't experience those things. The brain's tracking it, but it's not making that information available to itself. Instead, what we feel is affect. We feel pleasant. We feel unpleasant. We feel calm. We feel worked up. Those are really simple feelings that are with us all the time in every waking moment of life. So they're really properties of consciousness. When they get really intense, those are the moments that we experience them as emotions, but they're always there, even in moments of cognition or perception, for example. I also want to say that there are many cultures in the world that don't distinguish cognition from emotion. Like, that's not how people in certain cultures experience themselves in the world. They don't make that distinction. That's a very Western distinction. And I think we have to have a theory of brain function that accommodates everybody's experience, not just certain people's experience, because we happen to be the ones with the money and who are in control of the journals,